Hello everyone and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today I want to talk about a topic that has been requested a lot and something that I thought was pretty interesting. So maximizing your silver in Black Desert without paying to win. So assuming this is like your first or second year playing the game and you don't want to spend any money, what are some things you can do? Let's talk about it. So I wrote a list down of some things that I would recommend to newer players or people just like returning and stuff. That don't want to spend any money. So with the exception of the value pack in this game, so as we all know, if you played any other MMO in your life, you kind of know some MMOs have like a $15 a month subscription, that, you know, monthly thing. This is the equivalent of that. So I would kind of keep this one on the, I guess, recommended if you're playing the game, but it's not mandatory. So just consider this the optional subscription of the game, and whether you have that or not, I think that is very helpful. So with that said, some tips that I could give you without spending money in this game or paying to win. In no particular order, I just wrote a list, so they're all pretty helpful. Number one is life skilling. Now, I understand there's no real right or wrong way to play this game. You can do whatever you want profit wise, and grinding, life skilling are always a good thing. But in terms of maximizing your profit without having to buy a lot of inventory, you don't have to buy a lot of weight, you could do a lot of the stuff in the game. I think life skilling is probably one of the most beginner friendly things. Admittedly, grinding is the most silver in this game, just across the board. It is what it is. But life skilling usually has an easier setup, and you don't need the most gear to do that. Obviously, more gear is better, more mastery and everything, levels. But ultimately, in terms of, you know, not having to spend money on storages, you could do this a lot easier. Also, you don't need as much gear. You could just jump in with, you know, average gear and stuff these days. So things that I would recommend in terms of life skilling, gathering being the easiest one to do, just because all you have to do is gather the things, and then you could either sell them straight to the market, and that's pretty easy, or you could take it a step further and take the raw materials you got from gathering and then either use it for cooking, alchemy, processing, and then selling it for more. So I think that's overall a very good thing to do when you're a beginner, and just because across the board, even if you don't have any gear or anything, just going out, you know, chopping trees anywhere or gathering blood, meats, whatever, very good. And a lot of the market will always use it. And from the 9 years I've been playing this game, people will still do a lot of endgame crafting for stuff. So it's good to stock up on, even if you don't use the materials early on. And I guess the best way to put it would be like, gathering has always been pretty decent money, whereas like grinding ramps up the more gear you have, but it's always steady income life skilling, and you don't need that much of a startup. But obviously more is better, and the higher you go, the more gear you have and everything. So just like your first year or something, you don't know what to do, you're lost in this game, you just want to make silver, and you don't know where to grind either, just try life skilling. And gathering, fishing obviously is a good one, because all you have to do is the quest in the game, and wait, hold on, it's on my other character, let me show you. So this thing, we actually have the Sea Palace open right now, and it's easier to get there. And so basically you do a quest and it gives you this fish tank. That means you could fish longer. It's basically more inventory. You don't spend money. There's a thing in the Pearl Shop that allows you to expand it from 50 to 100, but that's kind of irrelevant unless you're a full-time fisher, which that's wild. But anyway, this is good enough, and I would recommend it. Fishing is obviously always good. It's just straight silver. You turn it to an NPC, and then you get more silver by trading it. So yeah, you don't really need too much. If you're worried about inventory slots because you're a new player, what I would recommend is playing on seasonals, and they give you a lot of inventory slots. Like for all these things right here, I have never bought a single one of them after I maxed out mine like 7 years ago. All of these are literally just playing the game, events, and season characters when they give it to you. So they give you a lot of inventory slots. So you don't have to pay for it. Just playing the game, holidays, events, it kind of just adds up over the years. And yeah, that's one of those things you could buy, but you don't have to. And in terms of weight limit, a lot of that you used to be able to get it from loyalties. I don't know if you can anymore. I could look that up like right now, but yeah, okay, so you can still get it from loyalties, but it's very limited. So either way, fishing I think is an easy one to do, and I think overall, whether you have to pay to win rod or not, you'll still be fine. Next, we have hunting. Hunting is a pretty easy one, high investment, but either way, a lot of these are pretty easy to do. The first, like gathering, fishing, hunting, very solid. Cooking, alchemy, processing, or you take your raw materials and then process them into next tier and then sell it. Always good. Trading is kind of dead. Farming is very specific for what you need, and sailing and bartering is like playing a different game, but that's what I would recommend. And the next thing I want to talk about is for all of you grinders out there, and you're probably like, oh, I don't have a lot of weight limit. What do I do? So this has been in the game for years now, and let me show you how it works. So if you don't have a lot of maids or you don't have a lot of inventory slots, weight limit, let me show you how to horse stack your inventory. This is not really new. It's just one of those things where some people might not know it. Okay, so you're probably really like, okay, so my horse, it can carry stuff, but it only has 200 weight limit. That's what they want you to think. I wish I have given feedback to Prolibus as well, and I was like, maybe they should just remove weight limit if people are going to do this and Prolibus is not going to actually fix anything. Let me show you how it works. Okay, so you see how this appears when you have a horse nearby. Now let me pull something out that's like, I don't know, 1,000 of these. Now let's say your inventory fills up, but this is over, max, right? So you see how it's over the cap? Now let's say, pretend this is trash loot where you're grinding. Now let's say you get another 1,000, right? And you're like, oh, okay, so I can't deposit anymore because it gives me, well, I guess at a certain point it'll be overcapped. But let's say the number is too big and you're like, you can't deposit anymore, and then you get another 1,000, right? So what you would do is take it from your horse, put it back into your inventory. Now your thing is stacked, and then you stack it on your horse again. You do that for your entire hour. So weight limit is essentially irrelevant, but I mean, it's probably a good idea to, sell your loot at some point. But that's how you do it if your inventory is full, and you would be surprised at how many people don't actually know that. And you don't even have to pay to win anything. If Prolibus was going to fix that, it would have been 9 years ago when people complained about it. All right, so another tip that I could give for people who like grinding is grind spots that give high amounts of overall silver in terms of trash loot versus grinding for places that would give, not treasure items, but like accessory drops. Now, I understand the thrill of grinding for that, like the accessory, the nice Deboreka accessory and everything. It boosts your silver and up. But it's always better to just sell it to the vendor because you're not taxed. So whether you have a value pack or not, you're still losing out on silver from the market. Whereas if you grind a spot in the game that gives mostly stuff that you can sell to the vendor, that's not taxed silver. So you just make more in the game. So that's what things I would recommend. So for example, these are actually, I guess, relatively solid spots. Elvia or Camp, a lot of these, this is a pretty decent spot for silver. I guess this is a kind of a weird example because after the update, they made it so Agris doesn't work, but that's like an entirely different story. But basically, all the drops here is very consistent and you sell all of these to the vendor, or most of them anyway, and that's where a majority of your silver comes in from. But if you're grinding, you know, another spot, we'll just take this one for example, right? You get disto earrings and then a bunch of other stuff. A lot of these come from, you know, like the profit you get comes from the drops that you would sell to the market, and then that's obviously taxed. It's a different thing, but you know, you see how like if you don't have, you know, a value pack, you would be losing more than someone who does. So that's kind of the, you know, no pay to win part about that. And then let's bring us to the central market. Now this game is an event-driven game, and what does that mean? The economy is basically dependent on what kind of events are happening right now, and you could find that by reading the patch notes and everything. So what does that mean? How does that work? So as we all know, New Sovereign Offhand is coming out in the next like 3 weeks or so. And what does that mean? If you look at all the weapons and everything, you'll see trends on the market over time. If you keep in touch with the market and just kind of like know what's happening, you can profit off of all of this stuff as well. So learning the market is a very strong thing. Finding out which items or which materials is going up and down based on current events in the game. So it doesn't really matter what kind of materials, it just like depends what's happening in the game. So yeah, it's one of those things to keep up with, learning the market. I have a monthly series called Window Shopping. We look at trends on all the notable items, and I talk about whether it's good to buy them, sell them, enhance for profit, and all that stuff. So you can check that out. I'll leave a link in the description if you're curious. The next thing I want to talk about is doing bosses and your weeklies. Now, this is something more towards people who have a little bit more gear, but there's something that you could do whether you're a beginner. So when I talk about bosses, we talk about all these things that have an icon. So like field bosses, world bosses, you know, party bosses and everything. So just like events that happen throughout in the world that are overall good. What I'd recommend to you guys is if you have multiple characters, even if you don't main them, just leave them at different spots and leave them where the bosses are. So when they spawn, you don't have to bring your main there at every single boss spawn, and then just kill them. And then sometimes you get good loot. It's cool. And you don't have to really think about it. Even if you were like pay to win and you have a lot of characters, it's still a good idea to do this. But, you know, for people who are strictly worried about not spending a lot of money, these are extra things that, like, you know, give you an extra layer of silver, you know, without wailing on the game. So the next thing I want to talk about is, I guess while we're still on the bosses, if you can do Black Shrine, they are still worth doing. So like if you're a beginner, well, I guess not beginner, but like past seasons, and so you could still do the bosses. You might not be able to do like Calamity 7 to 10, but it's still worth doing like 1 to 5 every week if you're a new player, just because it does give rewards and it's better than not doing it. So I'd recommend doing it. And for all the geared players out there, do your parties weekly. A lot of the things come in by silver bars, which is non-taxed, but you also get a lot of items that are taxed, like Capris, Debo accessories. So yeah, it's good to learn them all. And even if you're a new player, I would start by learning 5, 6, and 7s, because they'll teach you the mechanics. And then there are some bosses with like 8s to 10, 8, 9, and 10. Those are basically more advanced. So yeah, learn the mechanics and then go forward. These are worth doing, whether you're a beginner or not. Even 1 to 5, there's just extra silver. But it's more like if you can do it, the higher you can do, the better. But it's better than not doing it. All right, so another thing that I actually get asked on pretty regularly is buying versus enhancing. So 99% of the items in this game can be bought with silver. And I think for most people, that is the way to go, because enhancing, I understand, is a thrill in doing that. And sometimes you get lucky and you spend less than the market value, and sometimes you don't and you spend more. It is what it is. if I were to be able to basically, like, let's say I first started the game and the game was giving me two choices, and the game was like, do you want to live for the gamble and enhance, or do you want to be average RNG throughout the entire thing, you know, like your entire BDO career? I would choose being average every single time, just because I've had enough times throughout my 9 years of playing of just going all the way to the worst. I've been playing this game before they even had a pity system for everything. And so, yeah, one real thing I can tell you is buying your gear, trust me, I can say, is probably the way to go if you plan on playing this long term. Admittedly, going into the end game, there are some things you can't make, or like you can't buy. There are some things you can only get to a certain point and you have to enhance the rest of it, like Karazad from Nov to Deck, and then Sovereign. You can't buy that, but you can get to Sovereign, but upgrading it is something you have to do by yourself. But the rest of it, you can just buy it. And if it has value on it, I would save up the silver and just buy it. That's what I would recommend. So you might not believe me, but trust me when I say buying things 99% of the time is better. There are very few things in this game I would recommend making yourself over buying it. But I talk about that in that window shopping series about learning the central market. So yeah, you could watch that one. And the last thing I wanted to tell people is, if you're free to play and you're like, oh, I don't want to spend, but I want to get like the value pack or something, there's this thing in the store. It's called the loyalties. Every day you log in, you get like 300. And what I would recommend is, sometimes they have things where you could just buy like a 1-day value pack over here for loyalties. And if you don't know how it works, basically, let's say you're selling an item, right? And then let's say you sell an item, but then you know how when you sell it, it says collect the silver. If you do not have a value pack, you keep that there and you don't collect the silver until you have the value pack. So basically, let's say you have a bunch of items you've been saving for a month, right? But no value pack, you're free to play, right? You just leave all of that there without collecting the silver. And then when you get that 1-day value pack, you just start collecting, because all of that, you don't get taxed as badly with it. So that's one thing I'd recommend. But also at the same time, if you're ever wondering what it's like to, you know, have the value pack, blessing, and the old moon book, honestly, it's so minimal these days in 2025. Like, yes, they are nice to have, but every year it feels like the value of having all these books and everything, like the blessing and the secret book, has kind of gone down, because like people make more silver every year. And so the value of all of this is kind of like, you get less for your money. So if you don't have it, trust me, it's not really a big deal. They kind of give a lot out from events and just playing the game on the regular. So I mean, like, you really aren't missing out too much, and they just kind of, every now and then, if you're playing the game, sometimes they have handed out, and especially through seasonals. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's nice to have, but it's not really mandatory in the game. The only thing that I would say is really nice is the value pack, which is the optional monthly sub for this game. So I treat that a little bit differently, but like blessing, old moon, all that stuff, if you didn't have it, it's not really a big deal. It's just one of those things that kind of convenient to have. But aside from that, those are the things I wanted to talk about. There's probably more things I can list that I'll think of another time. So if you enjoyed it, drop a like on the video. Maybe I'll do a part 2 when I think of more stuff. But I thought those are pretty good ideas for newer players who are just starting out the game, have no idea what to do, and are lost. But with that said, that's all from me today. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to see you come back. And we got a bunch of videos testing new grind spots and everything. If you're wanting to learn about new grind zones, the rotations, how much silver you can make, check those videos out. Linked in the description to the playlist of all the grind spots I've done and more other stuff that I've done throughout the year. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace!